Woof, big dog. What up, everybody out there? Happy hump day. You made it through the middle of the week. Everything else is just smooth sailing downhill. Hey, thanks for taking the time to join me here on the morning show, 8 a.m. Eastern time, Monday through Friday, where we talk electrical, we talk code, we talk anything to do with electrical. You're the reason for the show. Do me a favor, as always, if you're first time here, where you been? If you're a long-time follower, we appreciate you. You have no idea. Do me a favor, in the comments, let me know who you are, where you're from, what you got going on. And today's topic, if you want to chime in, and I'll share them on the screen, and you can help everybody that's watching, is let me know what your first steps are when you get to a job site. Now, I'm going to focus residential because on a construction one, it's a lot more pieces when it comes to plans and going to the job trailer and looking and trying to coordinate materials and all this stuff. That's for a different day. And that's usually done by the lead or, some of the head guys. So for me, I want to talk about my thought processes for apprentices and what I would let them do, how I would train them, and what's the first thing I do in my planning for like a big residential, multi-million-dollar residential project. But again, whether it's commercial or residential, some of this stuff that I do early on is going to be the same, no matter where you're at. Now, some big companies, you'll have job site meetings, safety meetings, and all this kind of stuff. We're not talking about that. I'm kind of talking about what I do the first time that I roll up on a job site with my van, done a little pre-work, all this kind of stuff, or what I expected my guys to do when they first rolled up. Okay, we're going to talk about that today. You have some unique experiences that you've been through. Do me a favor, as always. Again, share them in the chat. Don't be shy. We want to hear it. This is what it's all about. It's all about sharing, and I will share your on the screen so that others can see it, that type of thing. Other thing that we're going to be doing today is just so we can kind of get the flavor of what's going on today. We're going to introduce a poll, and the poll is going to ask whether you're a resi guy or gal, a comm or commercial guy or gal. We'll use hashtag resi, R-E-S-I, for if you're resi work. And that's going to encompass even service work, going out and doing service calls. We'll put that in the resi. And then, of course, is hashtag comm, C-O-M. That's commercial work. And then, of course, we'll have a hashtag none if you don't do either. But industrial, things like that, I'd kind of lump that into the commercial. So, again, kind of get a poll, see where you electricians are today. So we're going to start that poll here in a second. Also remind you, Fast Tracks Tube is sponsoring today's show. This is the greatest video platform I believe out there, and I think it's got so many features that I don't even know all of the damn features that it has. Okay, so play around with it. Works great on a mobile device. So again, Fast Tracks Tube, check that out. And of course, we're going to use TradeHog today to look up some simple things that we might want to look up. If you have any questions, we can use the hog as well today. All right. Okay. So as always, let me go on and start this poll real quick. There you go. Resi option. Actually, we just got two options. Okay. We'll just lump them together. So if you're a resi guy, then you're going to do hashtag resi. If you're a commercial guy or gal, you're going to do hashtag comm. Let us know. It'll be, I imagine it'll be a mix. But remember, if you say, well, I don't fall in these categories, resi is any service work, service call work, residential service call work, anything that's touches a resi, you're going and lump it in a resi. You might do a little commercial, but if your primary thing is resi and all things related to resi, then you go with that. If all you do is commercial, industrial, commercial buildings, run, all that kind of stuff, then go on and kind of lump it all in the commercial category. That we can keep it simple. I could probably break this down to industrial, but no, we're just going to do resi versus comm and see where you fall in that category. Okay. So far, it looks like we have 3 commercial guys and very little resi guys. Okay. Tells us a lot here when it comes to the show. What we need to do when it comes to content seems to be more commercial than residential, folks, here. But anyway, there you go. Now, real quickly, while we got this poll going, and I'm going to move this poll real quick because we're going to do some shout outs. So I'm going to move this poll right up here. on the right. Okay, so it's still going. All right, we got one resi in there. So I want to do some shout outs again, because at the end of the day, this is all about you folks, and I like to live vicariously through you and your successes. So let us know what you want to let us know, where you are, where you're from, all those type of good things, but do it in the chat. We're available on all platforms. We're on YouTube, we're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn. We also have our feature over on our website, and you can actually join Coffee Hour in any of our websites now. But the more popular one here is go to Fast Track's Tube, and in the navigation, you'll see Coffee Hour right across the top. If you're on a mobile phone, you'll see it in the drop-down menu. It's a Coffee Hour. Click it, and you can watch us live from the mobile app, even in the field. If you do have the mobile app, then you can go right on and open the mobile app, and you'll see the link there for to watch the video Coffee Hour. You just click it, and boom, turn it sideways and watch it from your phone that quick. So you definitely want to make sure you get the free mobile app. It doesn't cost you anything. It's available on our website. It's not in an Apple store. It's not in a Google store. It's on our website. Go to Fast Track System right here, fasttracksystem.com, and you'll see it in the navigation. And it's not going to load anything on your phone. It's just a link. So relax. Okay, we're not going to put garbage in your phone. All right. Seattle, welcome. Good morning. Glad to have you here. Jonathan's in the house this morning. Jonathan, hump day. Thanks for being here. Jason, our first CMECP's in the house. Thank you, Jason. Glad to have you here. Cray, hump day from Nashville, Tennessee. Welcome. Marlon, thank you, sir. Shouting out to all the code nerds. Again, taking your time out of the day to get your week started with a little coffee and a little conversation. You never know where the conversation is going to go, and you can drive the conversation. So hopefully you'll join in. What's up, Rob? Good morning. Let's see here. What else do we got here? Michael. Welcome, Michael. Glad to have you here. Michael's over on Facebook watching. Thank you, Michael. Christopher. Welcome. Christopher's got that hashtag win, so he's shouting out to everybody, showing what to do. Again, get in on the spin for the September drawing. Crypto's in the house. Good morning, Crypto. What's up, Adam? Good morning. All is well, my friend. Woke up. Good morning. Got a little bad news this morning from my buddy who we were going to do some videos. He says he does not. He thinks he doesn't want his house to be on. He saw the views that we get, and he says, I just don't want my house to be blasted out there. So I said, dude, I won't show your house. That type of thing. So, but anyway, so we are going to do a short video on his soft start install, but he would prefer not to show the installation, his generator inlet stuff. But we will show the video on how to take a bonded generator, at least the one we were going to be using for his project, and turn it into an unbonded generator per the manufacturer's instructions. Okay, so people ask that all the time, because obviously I want an unbonded generator if I'm going to be using it for a whole house application, or even if it's not whole house, just manual transfer of selective loads, that type of thing. I now will be doing a video on how to balance out and select loads, because again, most of the electricians, I don't do DIY stuff, so I didn't argue with him too much, because I'm like, look, I'm not a DIY guy, but I do think a video that'd be beneficial to show people how you select loads and how I mark the panel and put little dots on the panel so that what type of stuff can be on and all that may be helpful to somebody. So I'm respecting him, so he doesn't want to show the whole install. And that's fine. I'm probably going to snap some pictures, though, anyway, and share them. So what's up, Manny? I don't know if I said this already. Manny. Good morning, Manny. Glad to have you here. Let's see here. What else do we got? Michael does resi and commercial. Okay, so it's a mix. But which one do you do the most, right? Which is your bread and butter? And go with that. Because I realize that residentials some people will do commercial. Some commercial will do a little bit of resi, maybe even on the side. So how do you draw the line? Okay, well, I draw the line is, let's say, what is 80% or higher what you do? If 80% of it's resi, then go with the resi, option A. That type of stuff. Same thing for commercial. That's how I do it. What's up, Tara? Glad to have you here. Thanks for joining us. Let's see here. Where we got here? Let's see what we got here. We got a bunch of people chiming in. Red Dog. Woo.
woo, woo, woo. Big
Grinding.
dog.
You know what? That is this the story of life, right? Is the balance, right? You're hungry, you're working the grind, but you still have to give that family time. I can tell you, if I had to give anybody advice, especially young, because everyone on TikTok, they say I'm 56 and they act like I'm old as dirt. It's not old, okay? But they ask, all the time. They go, when it comes to that, they go, how did you do it when you were younger and when you had to build your business? And I was traveling all over the place, teaching all over the country for Eaton and going everywhere. I probably neglected my family a lot. We did do a vacation every year, and for some reason, I thought that would make up for the fact that I neglected them a lot. But at the end of the day, you got to feed the family. You got to do what you got to do. There's no shame in it. You do what you need to do. When I never got the manual when it comes to properly raising children and a happy life. I never got that manual. I guess they don't print one. So you just kind of do it as you go. So anyway, there you go. Battles. Resi is your main thing, but you do a little everything. There you go. Good morning, Terrence. Glad to have you here, my friend. Robert, I see you in there. David, Resi. There you go. Cameron, by the way, David's in the house, another CMECP. If you're interested in the CMECP program, folks, check that out, cmecp.org. Love to have you. Had a bunch of people waiting for responses. So, and we've sent out quite a few approval letters. So we're still waiting on that. What is, Cray says, no, I like learning all stuff, resi, commercial, industrial. You do a little bit of everything. But if you had to throw yourself in one category, what would you be? What's up, Peter? Glad to have you here, my friend. Let's see. Yeah, if you do both, Rob, just determine which one is your primary, just for the poll. Okay, you can do both, but it's kind of for the poll to see where if you're 80% resi and you do a little bit of commercial, then you're a resi. All right. I should have put an option, a little mix. That should have been an option that I put up there, but I didn't put that up there. All right, let's see here, the poll. Let's see here, if I can add another one here. Let's do option C. Here, y'all might change your vote here. Mix. Okay. All right, there we go. New poll. Okay, poll updated. All right, so maybe you need to change maybe somebody needs to change their vote, all right? That type of thing. So a mix would be if you do a little bit of both, not 100% of either, but we'll throw that mix in there. It makes everybody happy, okay? Hashtag MIX, mix. If you do a little mix. There you go. Mixes are starting to come in there. There you go. Maybe you change your vote on that one there. All right, so anyway, back to the comments here. What's up, Paul? Glad to have you. Good morning from down in Houston. Let's see here. Angel, good morning. I am doing good, my friend. Thank you for joining me. Let's see here. So the easiest way that I can say in this poll is use the 80% factor. If you 80% or more of your work you do is resi, then I just go with option A, resi. If 80% of what you do is commercial and you dabble a little in residential, then I'd be commercial. If it's about 50-50, then I'd do the mix. That's the best way to say it, right? It's a 50-50, do the mix. If it's 80% resi, then choose resi. If you're 80% commercial and you dabble in resi, then you're really a commercial guy. You just dabble in resi. You know what I'm saying? That's an easy way to do the poll. Be interesting to see what we come up with. Let's see. Let's see here. Adam, first thing I do when I get to a job site is I get the best parking spot. I never had to worry about that on our big houses because by the time we came in there, it was just out in a big field somewhere or in a sud. I didn't have to worry about that. Commercially, yes. On a commercial project, it's all about how close we can get, especially if we're bringing in a bunch of conduit or doing something like that. On my commercial jobs, I usually had everything delivered, and it was a delivery area, and they would put things in a delivery area, that type of thing. But yeah, getting that job site. All right, so let's see what we got here. Let's see here. Leo's is a residential baby there. That's what I'm talking about. Let's see here. Cameron says 100% commercial. There you go, commercial person hitting it up. All right, so keep it going, folks. Now, let's kind of shift gears to today's topic, okay? So what we're going to be talking about today, and I want you guys to chime in. I mean, be very chatty on this, is I'm going to talk about my process when it came to what happens when I was preparing for the job or rolling up on the job site, those type of things, right? Those type of scenario, and it's going to be more resi in this scenario because at the end, the last 10 years, when I was younger, we did a lot of commercial. The last 10 years of my contracting business, I was primarily residential. So I would be in a category resi for the last 10 years because I did a little bit of commercial, a little bit of service commercial, but the vast majority of what I did the last 10 years of my 30 year in the field was really resi, and it was the multi-million-dollar resi. Okay, so I would be firmly in the blue. I'd be resi. So that's how I categorize it. Even though I could do both, and I didn't mind taking on a little bit of both, I'm going basically on the 80% rule. What's the 80% of what I do? That type of thing. Okay. All right. And if you do industrial, that's going to we'll lump that into the commercial, that type of thing. Now, if you do 50-50, that's where the mix comes in. Okay, 50-50 commercial, 50-50 residential, that type of thing. All right, so anyway, so let's talk a little bit about job site and what happens. Now, first thing, a large residential project. I have already received the plans. I've looked them over. I have put together my material list. Now, back when I was installing a lot, I used ConEst estimating software. Today, I can't imagine using anything but the Best Bid Hybrid, because it has a feature in there that, measurements and everything, and it can come up with a rough idea. Now, I will say that on really big houses like we used to do, the 10,000 square foot houses and stuff, when I was prepping for this, and this is before my helpers, this is me prepping, I wouldn't care so much about, even if I had a rough idea of the cables I needed and amount, I wouldn't so much worry about getting it all. I would worry about consumption. So I would probably, in most of those houses, I would start out with, I would get probably 8 rolls of 14.2. Yes, I used 14.2 where I needed to, 15 amp circuits. I did not wire everything in 12. Hell to the no. I ain't doing that. I probably would get 4 reels of 4. And these are 250 foot coils, by the way. I never got the 1,000 footers. A lot of people do. I just never did. I would probably get 4 12.2s. I would get 3 14.3s for switching between receptacles. I'd get that stuff right off the bat to get started. I would probably, first thing I'd do is, if in those really big houses, I would, again, of course, I'm going to go through and mark all this stuff. So if you have a good estimating software and you get started, like Best Bid Hybrid, I can click and tap. Maybe you're doing a traditional takeoff where you go through the plans and you mark things up with highlighter. Once I had my box counted and everything, I would have all that. So the very first thing before any job is I would go to the supply house. And it was also the perfect time for me to determine what things I should get at the supply house in bulk and what things I might need at like a Lowe's or a Home Depot. That can be, a lot of people say, look, I just take all my business to the supply house because I support local. Today, most of the supply houses aren't just local, right? They're just, they're big Sonopars and all. They're all over the country. So it's not so much just a little local mom and pop type of thing that you're supporting, right? So it didn't matter to me. But even back then, so back when I was doing a lot, we had what's called ECK Supply, ECK. It's real big here in the Virginia area. And so anyway, I'd come up with my list based on my takeoff. And you don't have to be perfect because, again, you're going to make multiple trips to the supply house, whether you like it or not, okay? And you have different stages. So I would get my helper, if they had a van, because they were separate and we were both going to a site. First thing I'd do is I'd come up with my list of basic starting material. So I'd get a big box of staples, right? Not the insulated staples, just a plain old mother load of regular metal staples. Again, you install them properly, don't need no damn insulator on them, okay? But anyway, I'd get those. I'd get the big box. I can't remember. I think like 450 in a box. Anyway, it's a real big box. I'd get staples unless I already had some from a previous job and I want to use them up, but I'd get staples. I'd get that. I would make sure I got my wire, my cable list and everything. So typically if I'm in a rough end stage, I'm not worried at this first visit, this first issue. I'm not worried about the panel yet. I'm not worried about any of that stuff. I'm just thinking of the day one. I'm thinking all the boxes that I can nail up and go on and get my cable. Okay, so I have it on my truck or in my van. I get all the cable I need. I'm not worrying about on this first day. I am not worrying about the range. I am not worrying about anything large at this point. Right now, I'm thinking of day one, first thing that I'm going to have, because I can always hit supply house, and I don't want to clutter up my van so full that I can't even move, and I'm certainly not leaving my copper on a job site. And then when it's a resi, I'm not putting a job site trailer. I'm not putting any of that stuff. I'm not putting a lock box on the site. I'm not doing any of that. Okay, that's just me. I'm just talking about me. Yeah, share in the comments what you do. So I had already kind of looked at the drawings. I've already done my takeoffs. I've already got my list of basic starting material, boxes, 2-gang boxes, 3-gang boxes, 4-gang boxes based on my takeoff. I've already done that preliminary work, right? Because I've seen the drawings. Now, when we used to do a lot of the smaller stuff, like the spec homes, we call them, then I got used to just having a box full of knacks. And that meant that I would always go buy, if it was a spec home, I'd always have a 100 box of the nail ups. I always go with the deeper ones, 22 cubic inch. I never go with 18s. So I would get those. I believe they were Allied boxes back then. They were black. I would get the nail ups, single gang box, a brand new box of that, full box. And then I would just usually pick up, and because of this first day, I would usually pick up, maybe 10 2-gang nail ups, maybe 5 or 6 3-gang nail ups. Wasn't a big deal at the first day, but I picked them up if I'm going to get something, if I'm doing something like a spec and I haven't had a real set of drawings. It's just basically laid out to code. Okay. I will have already, once I get there, then I would probably do a walk around, but let's go back. I'm talking big houses here. So I would already have my list, my basic stuff that I'm picking up. Staples. I'm going to pick up my nail-up boxes, 2-gang boxes, 3-gang boxes. I'm going to pick up light boxes. I've already looked that out. And again, in the code, everywhere that you could put a ceiling fan, it's going to need to have, where you could put a ceiling fan, okay? Then I would have the luminaire boxes or outlet boxes, lighting outlet boxes that can obviously support ceiling fans. And I would look at all those areas where I was going to do that. And I would have those boxes and everything. And usually I would get the little plastic ones that slide over 2x4. So obviously I have my cordless circular saw, so I can cut some 2x4s, those type of things. But that's still yet. I haven't gotten to the site yet. So I'm just going and picking up the supplies for day one. Okay. If you're somebody that thinks that you're going to get everything you need on one visit to the supply house, then you're probably very new into this industry, because you're going to make trips to supply houses. Let me tell you what, usually every morning or every other morning, depending on what you're working on, you're going to make a trip to supply house. This is what it is. Okay. So factor that time, obviously, or I have a helper who I can send or whatever, that type of thing. Okay. All right. So if I leave the house or leave the office, I go to the supply house, pick up, the basic essentials that I pulled off my takeoff. Again, staples, single gang nail up boxes, 2-gang boxes, 3-gang boxes, few 4-gang boxes. I'm not, based on my takeoff, throw it all in a big box. My wire, I want to get the cable ahead of time since I'm already there, and that type of thing. For me, one of the first things I made sure that I did was that our vans were always so neat that I knew that I had auger bits and everything. So I didn't have to worry about it. My typical go-to auger was a 3/4 inch, be right in the middle of the stud. Make sure I have nail plates if necessary, that type of thing. But one of the things I also used to do is on my truck, I would have a clipboard hanging. So anytime I used up something on the truck or I needed to replace it, I would write it on the clipboard. Now today, I probably would just use a phone and do it on my phone, the note feature on my Samsung. But back then it was a clipboard. It hung there, and I keep a list of everything so that I knew what I depleted or what I was going to replace. Because I like to keep a well-stocked truck, but not overstocked. Don't want to waste money just sitting there not making me any money. But I'd have stuff there. But we did service work too, so we always want to have a little collection of something. So anyway, I would make sure I had my auger bits, batteries, and back then I used a Milwaukee right angle. So I didn't use cordless drills for the normal rough end stuff. So I made sure we had everything. And then one of the preliminary things that I would do is I would always ask, and most of the time I was the one that was going to put the temporary power. Okay. Now we say temporary power. It was early in it after I bid it and I've won the job. And they would say, well, the other trades need power. I would get a temporary power. And I would ask that because again, if I got to work by generator, I need to make sure I have a generator. But I would always make sure to ask whether or not, we were going to have power there if somebody else might have already done it. Or they would say, okay, you're going to put in the temporary pole. So that is a whole separate project. I would go and put the temporary pole, that type of thing. Also, before I even stepped foot on that job site, I made sure that we had the permits and had everything we need in case the inspector just happened to stop by. Right? Those type of things. Now, some people ask me, have I ever started a project like nailing up boxes without the permit? I haven't, except for the fact that sometimes the homeowners in some big projects or even the contractor would pull the permit. And in our area that I did a lot of that work, as long as they tagged me to it, he was the one pulling it and paying it. It had me on it. So, but usually I checked all that before I even hit the job site, made sure the permits and all that kind of stuff is in play before I started on the job site, that type of thing. Okay. All right. So you done, you went, you got your list, you made your count. I arrive at the job site. Okay. So my helpers get there or my helper and I get there or we're riding together or it's a separate van. I have another crew coming. The first thing we do is when we get out of the truck, the first thing is we do a walk around. I don't start unloading anything until I've done a walk around. And when I'm doing a walk around, what I'm looking for is one, unless I installed temporary power, I want to make sure the power's there. And by the way, temporary poles get wired exactly the same way as a permanent service. Okay. Still have to have, if you're using ground rods, unless you're going to do 25 ohms or less, you still have to treat that service. We call it temporary pole, but you still have to treat it as a permanent service. Like it or not, code doesn't give any provision in 590 for temporary applications. It doesn't give any provision for you to treat the service as a temporary, okay? So you treat it the same way. The grounding electrode system's the same way. Again, I know some people say they get away with driving one. That's okay, but that's not what the code says. So I typically follow the code, okay? But you do you. I'm just telling you. So once I get there, I do a walk around. The one thing I'm walking around is one is to make sure they're ready for me, right? Make sure that it's all roofed in, everything looks good, it's ready for me. And two, I'm looking for any scraps that I might be able to find early on, like any 2x4s laying around that I can use for scabs, that I can use to put up a light box. I'm looking for that. So we walk around and see if whatever we can scavenge up front and make sure that we put in our truck so that we got it. So I'm looking for all those things. I'm kind of just walking around. Now, a lot of times in these bigger homes, that first visit, I will personally get with the owner or the builder and we will do another walk around. Obviously, they have a drawing in these big homes where they want things. They never just say do it to code, right? These are more custom. So I might have a walk around with them. Now, if you're doing a little spec house that's 2,200, 2,100, 1,700 square foot spec house, then I might walk with the owner or I might walk with the contractor and just walk around and see if there's anything special they want, because usually they just say wire it to code. Then that's on me. Okay, I've already looked at a little drawing of it, a blueprint of it, maybe an 8x11 of it, and I've already kind of know that I'm just going to lay it out per code, and I've already kind of done a rough count. And in those spec homes like that, smaller ones, I'm really not worrying about the box count. I'm just going to grab me a box, 100 box, and nail up boxes. I'm going to grab me, a bunch of 2-gang boxes, 3-gang boxes, things like that. Usually those spec homes are not going to have 4-gang boxes too often, but they may have some 3s. So I'm just grabbing the basics and staples and everything like that. In these real high-end homes, when we're walking it, I'll go in and I'll probably meet with the builder and say, is there anything special that you haven't included in the package that I bid on? That type of thing. Anything that's changed. And I try to get that up front as before I even start nailing anything up. I will take that time. Now, why I'm doing that, if you have a helper, this is when you instruct your helpers to start loading stuff in a specific area of the house and be consistent. For me, if it had a basement or it had a den or somewhere that was consistent where I could have them store my material, not the wire, because we're not pulling wire yet. Okay, not pulling any cable. I ain't leaving no copper on job site. Just things like the nail-up boxes, 3 gangs, 2 gangs in a separate box, kind of a knick-knack box, the staples, all that kind of stuff. Start loading it into a certain specific area, and that's the area that we're going to be consistent with. I don't want stuff all over the house. I want to be consistent where our stuff is at, okay? All right, so, and typically away from wherever the plumbers or mechanical guys may have stuff stored, I just want my own spot somewhere. All right, and I'll have them do that. I'm having a communication now. I'm walking around and making sure that there's nothing, no surprises, right? I'm just walking around going, okay, the plan said that we're going to have ceiling fans in here. That right? Yes. Okay. Because it's notorious on those real high-end homes, it's notorious for them to come back later and say, hey, I want lights at the kick plate, or I want lights over counter, little LEDs, and all this extra little stuff that kind of just appear out of nowhere, and they might not have been on my original review. That's important because my price was what was submitted. My price isn't for little things that are optional. And I like to get that out of the freight. That's just me. But as I'm doing my walk around and my helper are loading the stuff onto the site, basic stuff, getting the extension cords ready, getting them out, getting power out into our location. I always used my own. I didn't use somebody else's. I ran my own in. Okay, I don't want nobody blaming me for anything. Okay, having them come in and put me a 4-way box in there so we can plug into. Have them do all that essential stuff. That's what I got my helpers to do, and I had them trained to once I got the site, I was going it. Now, if I was sending a guys out, I had a lead and he had a helper, he would do the same thing. I would expect him to walk around with the owner. Now, some people say, well, we get there and there's nobody on site. I made it a point on mine that somebody had to be there when I started the project, and I was very prompt, and I made sure they understood that, okay? Made sure they understand when I was going to get there. I'd give them a window and say, this is when I'm going to be there. And a lot of times they would say, text me or something. Yes, we had text back then, Jesus. And or call them and say, I'm heading over to the site, that type of thing. If you're doing it and you go to a site and nobody's there, that's okay. Still do your walk around. You still have the drawings. You're going to have time to communicate with the owner. You're going to have time to communicate with the builder to ask those crucial questions about anything that's been changed since I bid this project. You can already start going, walk around, look for any of the scavenge, some scraps, some wood, some 2x4s that you're going to need for stubbing and things like that. Then I meet with the owner or the builder, and we look for anything that may be added since we gave the bid. That way I'm going to make sure I do it as a change order, right? But let's assume that that's all good. Nothing's changed. I've got the drawing. So then I start walking around. Now, one of the tasks that I do first is when I go in, I've always got, now I used to carry a stick that had markings on it, tape markings, okay? The bottom of the tape. So I had sticks that I'd walk around, and my receptacles would be at 16 inches to the bottom, or I'd have switches at 48 inches to the top, or whatever I was doing. I had a dowel that I had tapes of different colors already on it, okay? And later on, we progressed to PVC, right? Because in the PVC one, what I created was I used 2 different sizes, and one would fit in the other so that it would telescope out so that I could also have it for sconces. I had a height for sconces. So again, it would go in, and all I did was have a screw on it that just basically would screw into it to lock it in place. It wasn't fancy. I just drilled a hole and that was too small. And then I put like a wood screw, a metal screw through it, screwed it in it had a butterfly on the end of it. And I would screw it in and it would pinch the one inside, right? And it would pinch it. And so I would use it as one, but when I needed to do things like sconces or over counter lights and all, I would loosen up the little toggle and it would pull out the insert and it would go up. So that's what I did. But when I started, I didn't. I just had a wooden dowel. And I mean, even earlier, I just used a ruler, right? But I got smarter as I did it. So I come up with these little tricks and all. So I had a little, in the trucks, we have the dowels or the ones that I made out of PVC. That would be something we would use in order to start laying out boxes. So let's assume I'm on the job site, helpers loading stuff. We've scavenged what we need, loaded it into the truck. Now I walk in, I'm gonna walk around, make sure again that everything is in a position for me to wire. I don't have any walls that are missing that I can note that aren't there, those type of things. I'm doing a walk around. Now it's time for me with a good old Sharpie that I start laying out all the things, all the receptacles. And again, if it's a normal spec house and I'm just gonna follow 6 foot, 12 foot. In the countertops, I'm gonna do 2 foot, 4 foot rules, those type of things. But I need the drawings because I need to know where the countertop's at, where the sink's gonna be, where other things, where the box needs to be for the range, if that's what we're doing. I need to know these things, so I've got my drawing. A lot of times early on in these little spec houses is very limited, so I would lay out everything to code, right? And then to certain areas where I knew the countertop and all that, I would ask for a countertop layout so I knew exactly where to go, okay? That type of scenario. So, but we're talking big houses today. I'm just talking what I do. So I would start, hold on for a second, I don't lose my folks over here at TikTok. So what I would do first, again, is I would have my rod or my ruler, whatever you're using, and I would go around with the drawings and start placing the receptacles. Now, if you have a drawing that's a big, expensive home like I used to do, multi-million-dollar homes, they knew where they wanted receptacles to go. I did have a rare occasion where they said just install them based on the minimum code, except for where we've marked extra ones that we want, okay? So again, it all depends on what you get, but I would go around and I would start marking out the receptacles with the dowel, with the ruler, whatnot, mark it out, and I would do line and then a check. And the line and the check was pointing to the side that I wanted the box to mount on. That's all it is. So I'd do a line at my height. If it was 18 inches, 48 inches, 16 inches, whatever you want, code doesn't care, okay? It's just that your receptacles that are gonna be for your general spacing, okay, can't be above 5.5 feet and be considered to meet the spacing requirement in 210.52. So just keep that in mind. Can you have additional receptacles up higher? Absolutely you can if you want, but they don't meet the spacing requirement. So keep that in mind. So I would go around and start marking off all of my receptacles. Now, I was different than a lot of people. I always went to the highest floor and always the back corner room, and I worked my way down. Some people start down and work their way up. My thing was, if it was a multi-story, I went to the highest part, over to the room, whatever the room was, furthest room, and I always worked my way down from the top floor down to the next floor down and that type of thing. That's how I did it. Do what you want. But that's what I do. So while I'm going and I'm walking around, starting to mark things, my helpers have loaded stuff, or helper has helped, or maybe you're a one-man show. You've loaded your stuff into that specific area of that house or that building that you want to be your area to store your stuff, right? Once I did that, then I start laying stuff out. Now, if I had a helper and they've already got everything in, one of the things that I train my helpers is that when I'm done, they start following behind me and they will start nailing up boxes. Now, early on, believe it or not, with a helper and apprentices, and this is going to sound like you're like, really? I made sure that I show them, because I can't expect them. I showed them how I want them to nail up the box. I know people are going to say, oh, they ought to know how to do it. I don't care. At least one time, I made sure that all my helpers, everybody knew, okay, that I would actually, how to nail up that box, what the little dimples on the side meant so that I know that it wasn't more than, for the sheetrock. I would show them how to nail it up. I would show them how to do it, not to damage the box, all that kind of stuff. But I also did that early on with my apprentices. I showed them how I wanted them to do staples. And you might say, come on, Paul, staples? Yes, staples. Okay. I wanted to show them how they don't have to drive the staple into the sheathing. It just is there to hold it in the center of the framing member. That's it. You might say, now, I don't do that every time. I'm just talking to you about what I would train my helpers and apprentices. And I would always set the expectation that I never expected them to do anything that I couldn't do or wouldn't do. Okay. So I wouldn't send a helper into the crawl space if I wouldn't go into the crawl space. You get me? So early on for my helpers, I explained how I wanted to enable, and I also created a situation of honesty. Okay. And that was, if you're stapling and you miss and you damage that sheathing, don't hide from it and think I'm going to yell at you. I'm not. Right then and there is the time to fix it. Okay. When you do it, don't try to do it and then hide it and say, oh shit, Paul's going to get mad because I missed it. No. Fix it. Take care of it right there. I did not care if you had run a 15 foot or 20 foot of 14.2 or 12.2 and you damage it. I did not believe in taping it. That's just me, because I took so much pride in how we installed it. I mean, crap happens. I get it. I would much rather them identify it and remove it and replace it right then, and instead of hiding something from me. Okay, because if I got a 20-foot piece of NM that they got to scavenge out because they damaged it, I'm still going to use that somewhere. So I get them to coil it up, right on it what the length is. What I'll get them to do is cut out the damaged piece right at where they damaged it. And then I'll have two separate reels of maybe one is 20 feet long and maybe the other one's only 2 feet. Whatever. I can use the 2 feet for pigtails. I can use the other for some other area. So nothing went to waste, but I much rather have the honesty up front than they're worried about whether or not I'm going to yell at them, because I wasn't going to do that. This is why I showed them how to drive a staple. This is why I show them how to nail up a box early on. Okay. Don't take it for granted. All right. But I don't do it every job site. Now I might remind them. I'm like, remember, staples aren't meant to be driven into the sheathing. Remember that. It's just to hold it in place. Okay. I might mention that stuff, but it's just part of me being my OCD that I was. Okay. All right. So anyway, what do we got? Some comments here real quick. Let's see what we got. We're still just laying out boxes right now. It says, what service vehicle did you use? I had a regular Econoline. I think it was Econoline 150 vans is what I had at the time. Okay. Oops. Let me see if I got more in here. What's the best option for the resident and commercial electrician? Today, a lot of people are going with those little minivans, right? There's those little mini. I was just an Econoline 150, or I guess that's what it was, work van. Me and my brother's first van was like that, and a work van with shelving in it. Today, there's really depends. Resi guys can get away with just a nice truck with bends on the side. Hell, a truck with adequately done pack outs in the back is perfectly fine today. Just remember my belief in putting your name on it, and magnet mounts, or whatever you do. But yeah, it's really today. But I say if you do a lot of service work, then you want to be able to keep a good supply of things on hand, then I recommend a van. I don't recommend, today you can get away with those little minivans. Later, towards my company in Virginia, I got an Astro van. Okay, so we had the Econolines, and then I had a little Astro van. And the Astro vans was great too, because it was just big enough to have the shelving, just big enough to put stuff in it. And I kept my vans clean. I didn't just stack crap in the middle of the floor. Okay. There was a place for everything. But again, it just really depends on what you're doing. If you're doing a lot of service work, then, I recommend a van, only because you can keep a lot of stuff on hand so you can get that job done when you're at the job. You don't have to keep running to the supply house, right? So you can keep an adequate amount of stuff, because at the end of the day, that running to the supply house is going to cut your time, right? That type of thing. So it really depends, okay? Higher roof vehicles are great. If that's what you get, one of those high roof ones. Those Sprinter vans are great, but they're expensive. That type of thing, okay? And here's that. But bending over, and when I was young, it just didn't matter. I mean, some of the things we look back on, just bending over to get in it, something really quickly, that's a short term. It didn't bother me that much. So, anyway, okay. Let's see here. What do we got here? Am I talking about you? let's see. Okay. So, all right. So now I'm walking around, I'm laying out. My helpers are trained to come behind me and start nailing up boxes. So one of the things that I would do is be very descriptive on the studs, on the side of the stud, and on the front of the stud, whether it's a single pole, three-way, four-way. But I also use the side of the stud to write anything that I wanted specific, right? You know, I used as much of that real estate of that stud as possible with a nice Sharpie. Always had plenty of Sharpies to write things on these studs. And so I would lay it out so that they would know it's a 2-gang, 3-gang, single. So right now we're just laying stuff out. They're coming behind me as I'm moving through the house. They're coming and nailing up boxes. Okay, so we're moving through the house. And so I move from one side also. Another thing that I would teach helpers early on, and this is something that's kind of funny because I've been seeing some videos and some online. Dustin does a lot of videos where he's roughing in with NM cable and all that. And no disrespect to Dustin, I'm sure he's an amazing electrician, but they always seem to be wearing their full tool belt with every tool known to man hanging from their hip. Even if they got the shoulder ones, still, it makes you hunch over and you pay for it later in life. You do, okay? You don't need to carry every tool. And so I would talk to as I told you, I used to educate my helpers and apprentices all the time because, again, they had the luxury of being with me. So I was always teaching them something. Something was always a teachable moment. And one of the things that my guys always would give them is a little speedy pack, which basically loops into the belt. And it would hold your side cutters, it would hold your strippers, it would hold a knife, those type of things. It would hold a 10-in-1. People say, Paul, they had 10-in-1s back then. Yeah, they had them, or at least 8-in-1. We had something. So they would at least hold those things. And I would tell them, this is all you need for roughing. And you got to have your hammer and your measurer. And a lot of people just use the hammer, the height of the hammer to do their nail ups. Okay, it doesn't really help you when it comes to the switch boxes, right? So again, I just never taught to use the hammer. I taught to have a device or a ruler, whatever your flavor is. But at the end of the day, I don't know why people wear every tool known to man in a rough end. You don't need that much for the rough end. Especially when I'm walking around laying it out, I ain't got nothing but the dowel, right? I ain't got nothing but and I've already done that, so they don't need that. I'm doing that. They don't need anything but a hammer and the box. And at this point, to be honest with you, they're not even pulling cable yet. So all they really need is their hammer. So they can be more speedy rather than having everything weigh them down. And they're moving around and putting all the nail boxes. So we do that first. So we'll go through, they follow me, we go and we nail up every box that we can nail up or that we can identify right now. Some stuff I'll add as we go because I don't know where things are yet. I may not know where the range is yet, right? That type of thing. So, but I'm walking and moving around, and that's not going to be typically a box anyway. And most of mine, it was just a surface mount range box. But I'm laying everything out, and that's what my helper is doing. Okay. Now, once I get done, they're probably still nailing up boxes. I get done laying off what I'm going to lay off. And so at this point now, I want to walk around and I'm going to start thinking about the routing. I'm going to start thinking, okay, where's the panel? Okay. And one of the worst nightmares, okay. And also I have the circular saw there, the cordless Ryobi, or whatever you're using there with those scraps that they brought on of the 2x4s in case I need to scab anything or add anything. Okay. So that's the first thing they would do is they would do the receptacles and switches, not the light boxes yet, receptacles and switches. Okay. I would start now once they do that, then I would go around and I'm starting to look now while they're doing that. And this would be the same way if you were the electrician and you had helpers. The electrician, whoever's in charge, would now look and say, okay, where is my panel going? Where are the panels going? And also looking at the box layouts, I'd start to lay out how I want the circuits. Now, personally, I never did that on the blueprints beforehand. I just like to do that while I was there. one of the biggest nightmares for an electrician, I don't know if you've ever had this happen to you, is that you do all these circuits and you forget a home run. And that is one of the worst nightmares, that you forget a home run and then the damn house is sheetrocked and then the circuit doesn't work because you didn't feed it. I can honestly say, knock on wood, that's never happened to me because I was so anal about where my home runs were going to go. And I marked the box everywhere on the circuit that my home runs were going to be. So I start again upstairs when it comes to that type of stuff. When I'm getting ready to lay out my circuits and how I'm going to run them, I was also very familiar with using the Sharpie. Again, I wasn't shy from a Sharpie. Okay, so I would go up and say, okay, this bedroom here, look at the number of boxes we have and the lighting. And I'd go, okay, this is circuit 1 for this. So I would mark where my home run's going to be. Okay. I typically was a guy that liked to bring the home runs into the switch boxes rather than to the receptacles. That was just me. More room usually in the switch box, unless it's just a single pole switch or something. But most of the bedrooms in those houses weren't a single switch for the light. Those were either 2-gang or 3-gang because they were going to have something fancy going on. So I wanted to go where I had more room. So I typically would mark on the stud right there, HR for home run. So I'm visually laying out this house based on the boxes, right? And then I'll go in and go, okay, all right, there. And I go into the other bedroom. Again, I look at the number of receptacles, lighting, and then I might say, well, that's not so bad. I'm going to pick up the hallway receptacles as part of this bedroom, okay? So I would mark where my home run's going to be, all right? And I mentally pick a picture saying, okay, I'm covered because I'm going to do that room, and now I'm going to pick up this hallway. And in this hallway, I might pick up this lighting, that type of thing. So I was mentally determining where my home runs were going to go, okay? Now, if you have the drawing with you because you just laid things out, then I would have no problem. Typically for me, it would be just use a certain color highlighter, and I would highlight on there where my home run was going to be. So I knew that's where I was going to take my home run. All right. But I was also making sure that as I walk through, that I'm looking at the boxes, I'm not going to leave anything hanging. So that room is done. That room's got a home run for that room. Then I physically walk into the hallways and look and say, okay, over here, I've got laundry room. Okay, go over, mark the receptacle for the laundry circuit. Home run there. Okay, lighting. At the lighting, I look at it here and I say, is this lighting going to be on with that hallway? Or is it going to be maybe be on with that bedroom? How am I going to do this lighting? It's not going to get a home run. Okay, so those are the things that I'll been mark, and I would use the size of the studs, and I would even mark home run, or I would put feed from hallway, or those little things. Everyone's different, but I would do this kind of stuff as I'm walking around. Remember, their helpers are nailing boxes up, and I'm doing this pretty quick. It sounds like it takes a lot. It doesn't. You get used to it. Smaller homes, it's easier. Bigger homes. So I do that, and I just walk through the upstairs, and I get kind of a game plan. But my key is to make sure I have enough home run locations to satisfy the area. That's the big thing. Whether I loop it here, there, or go over here, it doesn't matter. For me, I'm making sure that I've adequately got my home runs determined on every area up there, okay? So I'm like, okay, this area upstairs, another living area. This has got a certain number of receptacles and lighting. That really needs a circuit. Okay, where am I going to bring the home run for this? Right here. Put it. So that's how I would do it. Now, sometimes on those really big homes, if they had a really detailed blueprint, I would mark it there, and then I'll just take a highlight and kind of wrap it around the receptacles that were going to be on that circuit. Wasn't really necessary to do all that, but I wanted to make sure I knew where my home run was, and I knew it was going to cover this area. Now, here's the thing. People say, well, how do you know accurately? Look, the National Electrical Code does not tell you how many receptacles can be on a branch circuit. It doesn't. Despite what people want to tell people, you don't use 180 VA, okay? It's 3 VA per square foot. It covers all those general use receptacles, okay? So I'm just making sure that I have adequate home runs or marked where I'm going to do my home runs. That's it. Reason I do that pretty early on is because I want to make sure that I feel like I've got the locations marked where I'm going to have home runs to be adequate, that type of thing. And I move through from there. Now, as far as that, I move down to the next floor, and I determine if I've got 3-way switches on stairs. I determine, in my mentally, because you're the electrician, you're mental. You're not gonna write everything down because you fucking got Alzheimer's or something like my wife. You're gonna remember these things. You're invested in it, right? But the more notes you can make, the helpful to you. But again, I don't make it brain surgery. I just flow down to the next floor and say, okay, this is 3 ways for the upstairs lighting. I'm going to cover that on the circuit downstairs rather than the circuit upstairs. So I'm going to feed this box right here. Now, it may not be the home run. It may be just an F with a circle around it to let me know that I'm going to feed this box for that circuit. And I'm going to be feeding it from a circuit downstairs. I'm just going through to make sure that I'm going to have adequate home runs. In the kitchen, I walk in and I say, okay, what do I need? Here's the countertop. We've laid it out. We looked at the drawings. I might even have drawn out on the floor, okay, the dimensions of the counter so I know where the sink is and so that the builder knows where the sink is. The plumber knows where the sink is so nobody can argue if I follow the blueprints and I have put the receptacles where they need to be and somebody comes along later and says, oh, that sink is moved. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. I went by the drawings that I were given. And this is why I drew it on the floor. And that's helped me out many a times because they changed something. And if I've installed it and I've already run it and they say, oh, something's changed that doesn't match that layout, because I'll remind the builder, I'll say, hey, I did my layout on the floor. They're always going to be there. A builder's going to be there. Plumber's going to be there. I'm going to point, I say, I laid out the layout where I'm putting receptacles. Okay. That way, if I've already got it in and they change it, guess what? I'm charging them for it. I wasn't like, a lot of people don't charge for stuff. I did, dude. I'm just saying. The houses I did, if I had to change something because somebody changed it or deviated from what I originally submitted or what we were doing, and I understand change happens, my ass is charging them. I just keep a running change order, okay? And anytime I add change, I don't do a change order right away. Even in the roughing stage, I make sure that I would send them an email or send them a text or something to let them know that this is going to be change order number whatever to do this. I haven't billed them yet, but I always keep a running total of that. So I kept it. I'd either keep it in my phone or most of the time back then, it was in a little notebook that I would carry around with me, that type of thing. Okay. All right. So I'm determining where all my home runs are, making sure I'm going to have adequate home runs. I'm looking around to make sure, okay, a home run should cover that. A home run should cover that. I'll go right here. I'll mark it with an HR. That's where my home run's going to go. And then I walk in. So I'm trying to get an idea of where my home runs are going to go. Okay. Now, the reason I do that is because when I'm starting to lay out my circuits and drilling, and again, I let the natural flow. Okay. Who doesn't send change orders? My brother doesn't send change orders, AJ. So I know you're being sarcastic. Like, who doesn't send change orders? My brother does not. Okay. So I can give you a direct example of somebody that doesn't. He just feels like they're, part of the business. And again, if I'm doing okay, let me give you an example and how we used to say it. I do change orders, but my brother would say, look, that's a 10,000 square foot house. I'm getting $68,000 to wire it. What's another circuit or what's another thing? I'm not going to piss off. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to piss off this builder because I'm getting good money. And that's his mentality. Okay. Now, if it's a spec house, it's small, I'm barely probably scraping by with it anyway. But if it's a big home that I'm getting $60,000, $70,000 to wire it, it's a big home and I've got it all figured in right. And I got my overhead done right. Then my brother figures, you know what? And that's all he does is really big homes still. So he goes, you know what? I can absorb that. There's no sense in change ordering little things to the customer to have them pissed off with me or have the builder who, in his case, every big home that guy does, he calls my brother. So I understand his rationale. I just was never the same way, right? For me, I was like, I didn't give a shit. If I had to change something, deviate it, then I did it very politely and I would hit him with a change order. That was just the difference. I'm like, Paul's getting paid. My brother has a different mentality, and I guess that's why builders love Todd. Now, if it was big stuff, that's one thing. He would do that, change order, like, something huge. But most of the stuff that he would move, a light move here or there for the customer or adding a light here, he just absorbed it. Me, I was different. You know what I'm saying? All right. So anyway, I've kind of got a rough idea where my home runs are going to go. It didn't take me that long. I'm just kind of walking around. And now is when I start deciding, okay, they've got the drills out. Everything's here. I go to the upper location. For me, I get everything strung up to the upper location where I started this journey. And I literally start wiring everything back from there. I'll do that bedroom. We'll pull it. And so one of the things that I like to do is when I'm starting, they're still nailing up boxes probably, and I'm walking around just getting a rough idea, which is an ongoing thing. I mean, I can change it as I go. Now I go up there and I start drilling. And the drilling is just a matter of you train your helpers to understand to follow the cadence of your holes, right? So if anybody's had a really good helper and you've trained them, they could come behind you and they know where to pull the cable just by the nature of where your holes are. So I literally would start from the switch box upstairs, up in the bedroom or wherever it was I was starting, go down, drill through the studs to the box, continue around the wall. They knew what was going on, okay? Now, if I ever had a box with a hole down below and they would go around and see it, right? And then what they would do is they would got to use the hashtag mix or to do it. So I would go, they'd see a hole going down, maybe down from the top floor down. If they did that, then they would go and they'd see a receptacle that's within 12 feet away, and they might see another hole coming up. So they knew that when you got to that receptacle, it had to go down and over and up, okay? And so I would train them to measure off the right amount. I would say, okay, just hold it there, pull out 2 feet. Okay, that's to get you down and down. And then I would let them, they would walk it off to the other side, right? And then they'd pull another 2 feet. Okay. And then they'd stick it down and leave it hanging down. That way we can pull it up later. Now, what dictated whether I went down or up really depended on which way the joists went, right? So, for example, if I went down at a receptacle, I chose to route around my room, and I chose to drill down, and I was going to come up at another receptacle on a different wall. If the joists were running this way, and I had to drill over my head 4 different joists to get from here to here, then I would just drill around the wall because it's easier to just do it while you're there. But if by chance the way I was doing it was in a situation where I can get from point A to point B and not have to do that, then I would go down and do it that way, okay? But usually, or overhead. Same thing could be overhead, okay? Up into the attic space and then down, those type of things. So it really depended on what was in my way, but I can tell you, once I got started, I'm just drilling around the wall and then drilling up, once I get to the switch box, I'm drilling up for the lighting, okay? And then I'm just continue on, and I'm saying, okay, am I picking up the hall from this bedroom? Then I drill down, go through, and drill through to get to the hallway. I just kind of let it be a little dance, right? And so in my mind, I'm trying to run the drilling the holes kind of to complete the circuit all the way back to the home run, okay? Does that make sense? And that's how I approached it. And then I would go to the next room, and I'd do the same thing, and it really would go quickly. Now, one of the things I was anal about is I'm drilling on the walls. I needed it to be horizontal. I don't like this shit that goes like this. So one trick is with us, we always had the Milwaukees with the extension bit and the little 6-inch auger, that it would sit perfectly on my hip, and I'd hold it a certain way, and I could move it from stud to stud to stud, and it would always be level. And that's because I used a Milwaukee with an extension. Now, many people, again, can do that and eyeball it with a cordless drill today. It seems everybody's using cordlesses. My brother now even does his big homes with his cordlesses. And yes, you can laugh. He still uses Ryobi. And he's got a Ryobi one with an auger on it. I think it's maybe an Irwin auger. And I don't know how many houses he's done with this Ryobi. And it still runs like a champ. Okay, it's just him. Me, I always was the Milwaukee with the extension and the auger, that type of thing. But he says he doesn't want to drag out the extension cords. He's got plenty of batteries. He uses the high output batteries. It just works for him. So that's what he does. Okay. There's so many people out there that go Milwaukee, DeWalt, Ryobi. I'm going to be honest with you. We were not fanboys. You get me? I didn't give a shit as long as it got the job done. If I could buy 3 Ryobis for the price of 1 Milwaukee, even though I know they're probably made in the same factory, I'm buying Ryobis until I burn the damn thing up. That's just me. I'm getting my return on investment out of that appliance because at the end of the day, it's drilling a freaking hole. I don't give a shit. I'm drilling a hole. But you're not a real electrician unless you carry Milwaukee. Whatever. I don't worry about that crap. I'm like, I don't even think leader versus helper it has anything to do with the tools I choose. I use Doyle. I don't have a problem with it. That's a Harbor Freight. It's a great quality line. I don't give a shit whether it's Milwaukee. That doesn't say to me, right? It's all about how I do the install, not how I get there. So I don't care. I use Ryobi. I have from Milwaukee. I use whatever I got that'll drill that damn hole. Some people disagree, and that's perfectly fine. That type of thing. But at the end of the day, I could wrap the damn thing with duct tape. It doesn't matter. As long as it drills a hole, that's what I'm after. Okay. So I am not one of those loyalty fanboys when it comes to tools and stuff like that. I've just never have been. Never cared for that. It wasn't my thing. Anyway, so I'm laying all this out. And so when my helpers come up, they logically can follow my flow and pull the cable in the flow of how I drill my holes. And I just move systematically. I don't jump around. That was never me. I didn't jump from here, then go downstairs and go to the other side. I didn't. I systematically would go from room to hallway to rooms to rooms to rooms. You know what I'm saying? Okay. And that way I knew that I would never forget a home run. I knew that when I got from point A to point B, that I had everything covered. That way, if there was anything at the end I needed to drop out and pick up, like a receptacle in the hall or pick up a light in the hall, I could pick it up from really any of those circuits and not be a problem. But I always mentally followed the way my holes and drilled the way that I wanted them to run the cables. Okay, I kind of had some thought process to it. And then it just moved through the house, the top floor. And then I never left. This is just me. Everybody's different. I never left the top floor until I had everything pulled and I had my home runs ran before I moved downstairs. You might say, well, Paul, that's too... You got to run it sometime. So I would make sure that I completed that floor before I moved to the next floor, at least with pulling the cables, not cutting it in, pulling the cables, okay? So I already know where the panel's going. I know where I'm running it. I wanted to make sure that at least when it comes to cable, I was covered before I left, right? Now, once I do that, I'm going to move down. I've got all the cables pulled. I'm going to move down to the second floor, and I'm going to start working everything out the same way, methodically through the second floor and all that type of stuff, okay? Now, if I'm drilling and they're pulling all the cables, if I have the luxury of having 2 helpers or a crew electrician and me and a helper, then again, the helper's nailing up boxes, starts pulling cables. I move from one floor down. They're still doing their thing. Then the helper will come down and start pulling the cable downstairs. And then the other helper, if you have it, will start cutting in the upstairs and stapling and everything like that. That type of thing. Cutting up light boxes, putting up the 2x4s, that type of thing. All of that type of stuff, right? But that's the process that I go through, okay, in order to way I do those houses. Some people are different, that type of thing. Let's see. We got some questions. Let's see here. Let's see. Jonathan says he's fond of his Klein tools, but Doyle are great too. Yeah, I love Klein. I can't lie. I've had Klein. I've tons of Klein. But I kind of found these Doyles from Harbor Freight, and people say, well, but it's Harbor Freight. Come on, get over it. Get over it. Let it go. Okay. I had this. I can show you. Hold on. I literally will put these up against any Klein I've ever had. I literally will. They're going to roll. They're going to hate that I say that. But they're Doyle. They work really smooth. I've had these for a couple years. Yes, I've used them. Yes, I've done some attics and additions and stuff back when I was in Texas before I retired. So they got their use. I bang with them, okay, on the ends. Don't bang it on the actual swivel. That's a quick way to damage it. Always use the end here. You know, that type of thing has a little hammer for staple. I've done it. But at the end of the day, they are just as good and a third, or if not a fourth of the price. But that doesn't mean you don't have your brand you want to use, and that's fine. Okay, you know, that's okay, perfectly fine. I don't judge somebody by their tools. I judge them by their work. Okay, if you use cheap tools but your work is shitty, then hey. But if you use tools and your work is in great and your holes are drilled perfectly and you do all that and everything like that, I don't care what you do to get the job done. Okay. It's not red and black. You know, that's you. Everybody has their preference. I could get the job done regardless of what it was. So it didn't matter to me. I'm not a fanboy. Okay. Let's see. TTI makes Milwaukee, Hart, and Ryobi. There you go. Like I said, my brother's got some Ryobis. I have got the entire Ryobi line of everything. Circular saw, roto zips, everything. And I've been using them for years, and they've been dropped and banged, and they still work. This is not a Ryobi commercial. But again, I've owned them all, and they all just do their task. So I don't really care. Okay, that type of thing. It doesn't bother me, but everybody to their own. You know what I'm saying? It's all good. Let's see. Did you use multi-wire branch circuits back in the day? Not when I was doing the big houses. No, they're paying me such good money. They're getting circuits. They're not getting multi-wires. There's nothing wrong with multi-wires. When I did use multi-wire branch circuits is when we were doing a lot of work up in the universities, University of Virginia area, and you had these small little efficiencies. And we'd use multi-wires, for example, when we tried to get a 12-3 to the countertop so we could break the tab and get 2 circuits so that it met the minimum of 2 small appliance branch circuits. We used that. But it wasn't a big thing. I don't dislike them. They work fine. It never was. I didn't need to use them much. And back in the day, we just ran circuits. And again, we didn't use them a lot. Now, I know nothing against them. But we just didn't do a whole lot of them. But it had its place where we would use it sparingly. Okay. Been liking the Waiha screwdrivers, super lightweight. Yep. Doyle has their own screwdrivers and they're very lightweight too. Okay, I'm not doing a Doyle commercial. I really don't. But I wanted to show y'all that I actually mean what I say. Let's see here. Let's see here. Let me see if I got one in here. And I also, hold on here. I think they're all upstairs. Yeah, they're all upstairs. But let's see here. Let me see what I got here. Hold on. I'll tell you another brand that I use a lot that I got from Harbor Freight, which people are going to laugh, is these the Icon series nut drivers. Very light, very well done. They actually put the end size on the end of them. I like these as well, okay? But again, I'm a big Doyle fan, and they must be getting really popular because now they pretty much have everything. Doyle cable cutters, everything Doyle. And again, they work fine, and they're a fraction of the price. But I mean, that's everybody's to his own, okay? Actually, I don't. And Doyle is a product of Harbor Freight. Now, Harbor Freight doesn't sponsor anybody. So, yeah. So, let's see here. But I have heard a lot of good things about I don't know how to pronounce it. Waiha, whatever. I've heard good things about theirs. That type of thing. But, yep. AJ says, oh, Doyle rules. You know, great tools. You know, it's kind of funny that I bought a grinder from Harbor Freight because back when I was in Texas, I had to grind a floor because of the glue that was down because of the flooring. And the space was like 7 by 7 feet. And it took 2-3 days. I bought a cheap grinder because I didn't care if I blew it up. I bought a cheap grinder from Harbor Freight, and I literally grind that floor for 2.5 days nonstop to get that crap off because I had to get it down. And it thing kept ticking, never burn up. Okay, so you know. And then a lot of people say I don't buy from Harbor Freight because I'm buying from China and all that. I'm sorry. I love America. Y'all all know that, but I don't give a shit. I'm a product of us. You know, if you go in your house, 90% of the crap you have in there is probably made somewhere in China, Korea, or whatnot. I don't get into that. I'm only buying American because the people that say they're only buying American probably have things that are not only American. So if you're going to say that, you might as well go full bore on everything you buy. Otherwise, you're a hypocrite, right? So I just rather not go there. I buy what I need and I use it. If it makes me money, I don't give a shit because I'm a capitalist. I'm just trying to make money. If I'm roughing in a house or I'm wiring a house or I'm doing something, I don't really care. You know what I'm saying? What torque screwdrivers did I use? I might have one. Hold on. Okay. I always practice what I preach, right? Again, I would always I had Huskies, right? So I had a Husky because I always liked how it felt. And so I always had a Husky. So it's actually like a nut driver. I'd have the end pieces, springs, put it into it, and it feels just like it. So when I'm torquing something down in a panel or whatever, I'm always breaking out the Husky. Oops, that's me. There's other brands, okay? But I got this Husky, comes with a torque certificate, okay, yada, yada. Got all that, pass, yada. But anyway, there you go. That's what I would use. That's what I was familiar with. And to be honest with you, folks, just so you don't think I'm full of shit, I have two of them. I torque, I believe in it, and I believe that that's the first point of failure. But here you go. Here's my other one. I used this the other day. Hold on, I can't get the damn thing out real quick. Paul's getting old. He can't get his tools out. All right, there we go. So this is this one. I left a bit on it. So there you go. So this one, the bit's on the end, right? So push it up, and the little bit comes out. There you go. See, just a bit. So it's just a regular bit. Put it in there. Boom. There you go. Torque it down. Got your settings on it. Torque, 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 folks. The number one reason that terminations fail and break down is because of torquing. Okay. So yes, Paul practiced what he preaches. I always had my torques. And on the panels, I had my torquing wrench. I don't have that here. That's out in the storage area. But anyway, where did I get my torquing wrench? My torquing wrench was I got at Harbor Freight, and it had a plus or minus tolerance. Always worked fine. Okay, I didn't spend $500 in one or $400 or whatever. I just, because again, I was just using it on the panels and sub panels or remote distribution panels, the main lugs and all that, and everything else. I just use torque screwdriver, and I practice what I preach. I'm just saying. Now, I'm not going to be a total hypocrite. Well, I will be. I very rarely torqued at devices, which you should, and I should be using that device for that. But mainly, I was in panels, and I was at main lugs and sub-bed panels if it had a main breaker in it. And those lugs are the main lug only panels. Those type of things, anything like that, I always torqued. And then again, it wasn't till later, the last couple years, that I started using the torquing screwdriver as my regular screwdriver when I was putting in devices, that type of thing. Okay. Right. But early on, no, I probably didn't. 10-in-1, 8-in-1s, I didn't really worry that much about torquing at receptacles and devices, but that's usually where the breakdown's going to be. But I also remind you that I am also a backstabber in a sense of devices. So 14 gauge, and I did as much 14 gauge as I could, even in his multi-million-dollar homes. People say, I would never do that. I'd only do those in 12. Dude, it's 15 amps. Maybe I have to have more circuits. They're not going to overload it. When's the last time you tripped it in your bedroom? When's the last time you tripped a 15 amp circuit? It's a lot of hype over nothing. But if you choose to do everything in 12, go for it. But for me, no. I used 14.2, and that was fine. I laid my circuits out well enough that I knew what I was doing for it. Even in multi-million-dollar homes, I did 14.2 for the regular circuits and everything like that. And wherever I could backstab, I would. And I've never had a problem. And I've done a lot of multi-million-dollar houses back in the day. I was a hustler. Our company, we did as much as we could. My brother's a hustler. He works his butt off. But I tell you what, if you backstab it properly, you're not going to have any problem. I've seen more pictures online lately of wrapping the screw burning down because people didn't torque it right. Okay, I don't have a problem with Wagos because they're UL tested. I've seen the testing. I don't have any problem with that. So again, everybody has their own opinions, but I've never had a problem with it, and I've done quite a few. So let's see here. Michael says, yeah, bad uses. You use the torque wrench at Harbor. They got a great torque wrench at Harbor. I can't remember the name of it. It's a calibration sheet. They have some really nice, and they're not overly expensive. And they do the job because I have used them before and tested them with other ones. Especially when we were doing some tests on aluminum a couple years ago, we were doing some tests to see whether or not people really knew what they were torquing at when they think they're tightening it. And it was very accurate. And it was a Harbor Freight. I had no problem with that. Yeah, most of the day now, it's just powering on charging cell phones, laptop chargers, TVs, very minimum loads anymore. So it says, how can you backstab the wrong way? Okay, you can strip too much insulation off of it so that you have it, you're trying to push it too far in there. You strip the insulation off and you jam it in there thinking you're trying to get it down to the insulation, and you can break it that way. Also, people backstab and try to put 12 in a device that's 14. If you push it hard enough, it may go in. That's a problem because most of those backstabs are all going to be 14 gauge, not for 12. That type of scenario. Okay. Or you could not strip enough and not follow the gauge and not push it in far enough to make full contact with the spring mechanism in there. So yeah, there's a reason on the back of those devices they give you a stripping length. So any deviation from that length is actually wiring it wrong. Okay. So yeah, you can wire it wrong that way. But a lot of people don't like backstabs because they don't like the thought of the conductor only being like this. They like the more surface area of wrapping the screw. I'm telling you right away that the manufacturers have tested them. So if you run into situations where your backstabs melt down, it's just probably a loading issue, or they installed the backstab improperly, or they put it in and tried to pull it out and put it back in and weakened the mechanism, because they are evaluated just like anything else. So if you want to wrap, it's fine. Obviously, you have to wrap all the 12 gauge stuff. But if you want to backstab, I have zero problems with backstabs. I have zero problems with Wagos. I like the lever ones better than just the push-in ones. I like the ones with the lever better, but it doesn't matter. They're all listed and evaluated anyway. Just make sure the device you're using can accept whatever you're doing. I don't worry about those things. A lot of people do, and I get it. There's a lot of stuff all over the internet about this, and one guy says, every time I run into a backstab, it's melted down. But I got the same amount of people that say, my stuff's melting down even if I wrap it, because we probably don't torque it. And the one thing about backstabbing a device is you don't have to worry about torquing. The tension is already built into it when it goes in, so it's already been evaluated. In our mind, we think we're all engineers who designed the device, and we can see inside of it, and we're worried about this connection. It's listed. I put it in. Plus, if it goes bad, I'm gonna get paid to replace it, and it's a listed product. So, okay, I don't have a problem with it. You know what I'm saying? Bad says, didn't they used to have a device that had backstabs for 12? I'm not aware. I'm not aware of any. I thought they were all 14, and I've never backstabbed a 12. So I was always just limited. And I think the standard for the receptacles, for example, limits it to 14 gauge, that type of thing. I'm not aware of any. And you can really tell that when you go buy your 20 amp device, and you'll notice that the 20 amp device does not have backstabs built into it. Okay. And trust me, if the manufacturers could do it and put it in there to make it more speedy as a selling point, they would do it. But you only see that on the 15 amp, 14 gauge type of stuff. That's all you ever see. But I don't remember. I've never backstabbed 12. So, and then maybe some old ones back in the day allowed you to do it, and then they found out that was a problem, and that's why they changed it to 14 gauge only. I don't know the history on that type of thing. Maybe it's something to ask Trade Hog. Maybe Trade Hog knows that. So with that said, okay, let's go. Let's see here. Let's go on to, let's ask Trade Hog. See what Trade Hog has to say. Did they ever did the, let's see, okay, let me do it. Let me see. Is there a time when you could backstab a 20 amp receptacle? All right, so let's see what Trade Hog says. I don't know. I've always known it to be just 14 gauge, but let's see. According to the National Electrical Code, backstabbing or use of push-in terminals is generally not permitted for 20 amp receptacles. The NEC does not explicitly address the backstabbing. That is true for the NEC. But it is common industry practice and manufacturer specifications to push-in terminals are typically only rated for 15 amperes. That's what I know it to be. It says for a 20 amp circuit, the NEC requires the conductor to be connected using a screw terminal or other approved method, yada, yada, yada. This is because push-in connectors are generally considered less reliable for higher current applications, okay? Let's see, always follow the manufacturer instructions, okay? And then we can ask another question. But back 20 years ago, did they allow backstabs on 20 amp receptacles? Kind of just keep asking the hog and see what they, what it does. By the way, this is Trade Hog. You can try it out for a couple times if you're interested in it. It also has an annual subscription. So it says the practice of doing it has been limited to 15 amps. Historically, manufacturers have not provided push-in terminals for 20 amp receptacles due to high current loads and the associated reliability concerns. Obviously, the NEC doesn't dictate either way. So let's see here. Always refer to the NEC and manufacturer's guidelines. Let's see. Are there any device manufacturers for receptacles or switches today that allow backstabbing for 20 amp? Oh, let's do this for 12 AWG wire. Okay, this is how you can use the hog, by the way. Okay, but they may have made some way back in the day. Let's see here. It says, as of the latest information available, most device manufacturers do not allow backstabbing push-in for 12 wire, which is typically used for 20 amp. Push-ins are generally designed for 14 wire, which is used on a 15 amp due to the increase, yada, yada, yada. The NEC does not specifically prohibit backstabbing of 12, but it requires that all electric devices be installed in accordance with the listing and labeling. And again, most manufacturers are not. Now, that does not mean that you don't get the Wagos or the push-in type of splicing devices. That's different. That's from the manufacturer. We're talking about the screw terminal or the termination to things like, we're talking more or less just like receptacles. These are devices, receptacles, and things like that. You know what I'm saying? So, but can you, the splicing devices, absolutely. In fact, I've got 2 of them now that I'm going to be using on some 6 gauge in an application when we're doing that soft start. And I have 0 concerns about them. 0. Zip concerns about them. But yeah, one time when they first came out, backstabbing, they might have said, hey, let's do 12s and 14s. Yeah. And then they like, wait a minute. Let's pull it back a little bit. Okay. Again, I'm all about using a product in accordance with its listing. So if it does have a listing, so just follow the listing. That's all. Okay. So anyway, back to where I was at, because I have gone over today. So once I start pulling everything, we get everything drilled and start doing it, then we start trimming it out. And that's where we'll come around and make up all of the receptacles and make up all the boxes so we can push the wires back in the box so they can sheetrock, right? So we're talking about what we do when I first get to the job, first, not ongoing procedures, but when we first get there. So that's what we get started. That might be day one. That's when we get started. We're laying it out. We are nailing up boxes. We're drilling holes. And as I'm drilling the holes, my helpers are pulling the cable until I'm done the holes, and then I'll start helping them pull cable. But as we always start at the top, and I kind of move down. Now, what do I let my helpers do real quick? I train my helpers to be very independent, except when they're working with me. Okay. What I mean is I'm always using it as a teaching moment. So I don't watch them pull room A, pull room B, pull room C. I'll go back and check on them, but I give them independence. And when I train them early on, it really has a lot to do with how I drilled my holes. So I drill my holes, they can't mess it up. Okay. They need to follow my holes and go from device to device and just follow the holes. If there's no hole there, then they know nothing goes there. So they follow the way it goes. But also, that's one of the kind of things that I would walk in. And a lot of times I would walk through that. Like, for example, if I'm training a helper or an apprentice and I'm doing everything, I'll take a break. When they're ready to start nailing up box or ready to start pulling, I will walk up there and go, okay, I'm gonna need you to do these 2 rooms. And I need you to go, here's where the home runs are going. I want you to worry about going from this one. I want you to wrap around and follow the way I drill my holes. Okay. That's one circuit. This is one circuit. Okay. When you get that done, come to me before you pull the home run, and we'll kind of look at the routing that you need to go for the home run. So at some point, my helpers become, they're electricians and they can do it themselves. Then I don't need to do that. Right. Then I can let them, once they follow my general cadence of drilling, they can, and they know they got to have a home run for those circuits to finish them off, then they can do that. And they can run those and get them as long as they know where the panel location is. I just tell them, be frugal and make sure you get from point A to point B without any waste, right? That type of scenario, okay? So, but I give them plenty of freedom because that's how I train them. And then when they finish those 2 rooms, they may come to me if they're not an electrician themselves. Like me and my brother wire a house, we don't consult with each other. Okay. I start on the top floor. He starts on the bottom floor. Top floor is mine. Bottom floor is his. You know what I'm saying? All those kind of things. So we just stay out of each other's sandbox. And that's how we always did it. Right. We never worked together on the same floor like that. Unless I finished upstairs and he wasn't done downstairs. When we worked together back in the day, then we would come together and work downstairs. I'd ask him, okay, what have you done? What you haven't done? I'll pick up these, or I'll take the kitchen area, or I'll run these. That's how we communicated. I do the same thing with the helper, right? But I'm always staying in contact with them, and I give them tasks because I also want to see how well they did their task, right? Obviously, yes. So Michael points out about, how they're routing them, putting them in the middle of the stud, making sure they stay 1.25 inches away from the edge of the bored hole. I'm already going to dictate that, believe it or not, when I'm drilling the holes, right? And if I drill a hole while I'm doing it that I think needs a nail plate on it, I'll put an X right there. And they know that a nail plate will go there. Okay, so I'm already doing that. Now, when they're going up parallel with the framing member, again, they know that's kind of some of my instructions that I give them early on when we started, like how to drive a staple the proper way, okay, which sounds kind of cliche, but you got to do it. When I explained all this stuff, how to nail up a box, what I expected, and kind of early on gave them what to expect, those are the things that I would teach them. I'd say, okay, you need to stay in the middle of the stud, give them the code reference, 334.30, 300.4, all these things. I kind of would give them that education, but then I let them do it. And that's why I fostered this honesty thing, because they know I was going to come back, not necessarily to check on them, but just to see. And I wanted that communication. So my helpers that were truly helpers and apprentices and they were learning, I would always give them the tasks. After when I started drilling everything, then I would say, go ahead and pull and follow my drill. Now, if they've been with me for a while, I might let them drill. So I might give them as little learning moments. I might say, okay, these 2 back bedrooms upstairs or whatever, I want you to drill it and lay it and do everything. And I gave them that leeway to do it, that type of thing. So again, that's how I would train and give them the opportunity to do it, but not until they saw me do it for a while. Not until they saw how I drilled my holes, till they saw how I did things. That way I kind of trained them to the way I wanted them to do it, because after all, they work for me, right? And I want it done my way. It's my way or the highway. It's always been that way in our company. And so again, that's why me and my brother stopped working together, because again, when 2 start, and usually we were on the same page, but when it's my way or versus the other way, then I knew that at that point that I needed to leave AA Electric and open my own electrical contracting business, electrical service specialist. I knew then when it was time to say that's enough. Okay. But it took us a while, and we worked very good together, that type of thing. And basically it's because we knew our roles. I was on the top floor. He was on the bottom floor. You know what I'm saying? We just kind of go onto a job and do our thing. But today's topic was about apprentices and helpers. Okay. So that's kind of how we would do it. All right. Now, that's the rough end. And again, you take it by ear. You'll slowly find out where the range goes. You'll drill that. That's a home run. Easy peasy. Anything else, like any dedicated stuff to an air handler that may be in an attic, that's easy peasy because you don't have to think very hard. It just goes from A to B. You're getting the information from the HVAC guy, or you're getting it from the nameplates. That stuff is the piecemeal. The other stuff is just laying it out, drilling holes, nailing boxes, and things like that. Now, I would always, early on with my helpers, I would leave the switch boxes to me, and then I would come back and make up the switch boxes. So I was more focused on them doing all of the work that kind of could be the low-hanging fruit stuff. Make all the splices you need to make in the device boxes for receptacles, things like that. So I would do unless it was a single gang, it was pretty simple switch leg or something. Other than that, I would save the switch boxes for me until a helper got to the point where I would sit there. And here's how it worked for me. When I felt my helpers were at a certain level, that I would go and say, and I was always a teaching moment, okay, as I would take that switch box and it may have a couple 14.3s coming into it and 14.2, whatever, and I'd say, okay, make this up for me. And I would watch them make it up. And this is a learning moment that I think more people don't do. I would explain why they're doing it, why they have this much free conductor in there, why they're doing that. And that's also important when we're running the cable and they're wrapping around the box. I don't want a tail sticking out this long, okay? You basically go up to the box, go around the box, tuck it into the box so the cable goes all the way to the back and then comes out a couple inches. That's more than enough cable there. You're going to have minimal scrap. You might even have some pigtails for an equipment ground there. I do not like it when they leave me a damn foot sticking out once you went around the box and you you kind of pushed it in the box to hold it in place. You know what I'm saying? You kind of just tuck it in the box so it kind of holds it there. I don't want a foot sticking out. People say more the better. No, if you wrapped around the box, in the box, and the cable sticking out a couple inches, you've got your 6 inches at that box. Okay? Not worried about it. I don't want a bunch of waste, these long tails sticking out the boxes and that thing. I didn't like big loops, so I don't want their big loops. If they follow everything properly, I've done tons of homes. If you're a loop person, that's great, but I wasn't a big looper. I just wanted them enough to go straight in there. And so, yes, so I would basically have them work a box, make up their equipment grounds, show they had free conductor. I would let them do it after they watched me do some, and I would let them do them and see how they did it. And if they did kind of or made a mistake, I'd say no problem. And then I'll still continue to do the switches myself. And then in another moment, I'll get to another box and I'll say, okay, fresh box. Here's what we've got. We've got a 14.3 going up to a light fan combo, or ceiling fan and a light. It's coming down with the 14.3. You got a black and the red. You got the power coming in. Now, show me how to separate the black and the red so we can have two controls here, and you've got a single 14.2 coming in. So they know that they're going to take that single 14, they're going to pigtail on two tails so they can have it, one for the red, one for the black. Okay, they're going to do the same thing with the equipment grounds, bring them all together. Going to put pigtails over so they're available, and that's what we're going to do. Okay, and that's the way I like to do it. I pigtailed whenever possible. Okay, so and then I would show them how they line it up, how they twist the conductors together so that you know that when you pull that out on the trim, that those two wires or whatever goes, or those three wires goes with that switch. And I make sure that while they're doing it, personally, I made sure they put it in the orientation as they pushed into the box so that when I came back later, for example, if I have a ceiling light combo and I have a 2-gang box, and we were using red, for example, to switch the light and black to switch the fan, I always like the switch for the light to be closest to the doorway entry. So if that was red, for example, then I wanted the red one with the black supply line to it. I wanted that on the right side near the door. And that's how I want it pushed in. That way, when I come back for the trim out, I pull it out. I know that that is closest to the door. That is for the light in the ceiling fan. Okay. And I also can look at the color red so that I know when I get to the light box, we're using red for the switching of the light. That's my orientation. And so I would train them in how they put those into the box. Okay. Same way if we had 3 ways doing certain things, I would make sure things are put in the way I wanted them so that when they came back and we pulled it out, that I did not have to reconfigure anything. I knew that this switch went here, this switch went here, this switch went here. Okay. Just the way I did it. Take that little extra time, and that way on the trim out, it was much easier. Okay. So that's how we do it. Now, people ask me all the time, so when did I cut in the panel? I didn't cut in the panel until right near the end, after all my home runs are hanging there. And I got a list of knick-knack things that my helpers can do around the house. Things like that. Making sure we had outdoor boxes, whether they're hanging on the NM for the bricklayer to put it in. Okay. And all that kind of stuff. So at the end of the day, I'm going to start cutting in the panel. Okay. And I cut it. Now, these new Levintons, now you can actually make the terminations. Okay. But at the end of the day, I just would cut everything into the panel, and start working on my service setup. Okay. And that may be, again, I might have emergency disconnect outside. Okay. Cause you got to have that outside now in a residential. My meter where everything's going. That's because I'd already laid out where that's going to be. And so then I start working on that stuff while they're picking up all the knickknacks that they need to get around scabs, whether they're putting the lighting outlets in, whatever they're doing. That's what I do. And then I would progress down to there. Okay. What's the question? Michael says, NM cables entering the back of a box, which is not 1.25 inches from the edge of the stud. How can this be allowed? Always wondered about this. Yeah, and you know what? I have seen some pictures lately where the siding guys have almost taken it out. At one time, I wanted to create for these manufacturers, these boxes, an invention where the actual cables come in midway into the box, right? Midway, and so in the center of the stud rather than the back. It's basically the NEC is talking about running of the cables, okay? Not terminating of the cables. Running of the cables. So when they run parallel with framing members, 1.25 inches. Bored through framing members, 1.25 inches. It really does not speak about the termination. And so those boxes are, in many cases, right there. And that NM cable comes right to the back of that box. That type of thing. Code allows it. And again, let's just say the millions and millions and millions of homes that are being wired, I guess we're all just lucky it's not a problem, right? At the termination. I guess we're just all really lucky that nothing happens. But yeah, it's always been one of those things. And I would not submit a code change for me because I don't know how that would not affect the industry well, right? Because if the cables come in midway on a box, then it may hinder the device going in. or I won't be able to get the conductors to bend enough to get to behind the device. So it means the boxes would be bigger. And so I don't think the industry is ready for that type of scenario. Okay, so I guess we're going to work with what we have, because the worst case scenario is what you don't want is somebody looking at this and saying, hey, okay, now what I want you to do is to put a steel plate on the back of every switch box, every device box. I want you to put a plate now where the cable enters the box. We don't want that. I don't have enough issues, or I can't recall enough issues where that you're saying, Michael, has caused a problem. In that one, I mean, be honest with you, that has got to be like the holy grail of mess ups, because that one place where it comes down the framing member and then turns and goes into the box, not a big deal on the 2 gangs and 3 gangs, right? Because you can come off a little bit if you're worried about that. But yes, the nail ups and things like that, I guess the concept for me is that it just doesn't happen, because this boxes have been like this forever. And from manufacturing, if that was causing a major problem, then we would have had a public input by now, and the code's 100 years old, and nobody's submitted that yet. But the last thing I want to do is have them tell me that I need to put a metal strip behind every box, just because every box does that. It's one of those things I'd be very careful. You know what I'm saying? Be very careful what I ask for. So any box where they come in midpoint, right? That come in midpoint is probably going to hinder devices. A GFCI device, anything that's larger, any switch, it's going to hinder it. And it may bend those conductors way too tight than we want them to be in there. I don't know. But again, manufacturers are much smarter than I am when it comes to those. They get their patents and their development. And so I think we'd be careful what we ask for there. And I haven't really I'll be honest with you, I have not, and I don't have to knock on wood now because I don't do full installs anymore. I have never had an issue where a nail has gone through a framing member and hit an NM cable right at the box like that. Although I've seen some pictures lately where nails are close, I've never had it happen. And I don't hear a lot of people telling me that. So I guess it's not. But yeah, it is kind of weird that, yes, to get in that box, it's got to go more towards the back of the frame member. That type of thing. Yep. So one thing that you can do is when you're coming to those boxes, even though that hole is there, maybe if you're bringing in one NM cable into it, instead you go to the farthest knockout. That way it comes off the stud and kind of comes out and takes it away from the side. So if you're concerned about that, you can go to that. Even the where you nail the box up, right? And you have that knockout right there that's close to the framing member, it's still off of a little bit. So maybe you make sure that your cables come out a little bit and then go in so it's standing away from the edge of the stud. That way, if somebody just misses a stud, it's going to just miss it. You know what I'm saying? That type of thing. Okay? Anyway, that's the thought. Let's see. What does Bad say? There's been a lot of debate on grounding standard for S boxes. They are stating that if you cut a little window in the incoming ground and wrap the wire around the screw instead of using a ground pigtail is a code violation. Now, so I've heard people say that you have to have, I don't know if it's a controversy. I did a video on this and I explained, I don't know if this is what you're talking about, but where they come in and they use the ground screw in a metal box and they wrap around it and then they bring it and then all the grounds connect to it. Their argue is that it's not 6 inches. My argument is it is 6 inches. You just happen to be using it to bond the box. And we have an interpretation on this that basically, as long as it enters 6 inches and you have 6 inches of it, if you want to use this to wrap around a screw, that's fine. It's still 6 inches. Okay. I know you say debate. There's really just one guy who was circulating this stuff in a video. And I did a response to him and explained everything to him that would just, it's not how it works. The free conductor is the free conductor. Okay. Once you cut it in the box and you got yourself 6 inches of free conductor in the box, how you use it, okay, is what it is. You make it and you're done, and you're pretty much are bonding the box. Okay, so I think is it what matters is what you have coming into the box. You know what I'm saying? What you have coming into the box is, as long as you have your free conductor, it's then what you use with it in order to make up your connection. But as an inspector, if I'm walking around, I'm looking to see you have 3 inches coming into the box total. Okay. So yeah, there was really that one guy who was circulating saying that if you wrap the screw and it's 1 inch away, then you don't have 6 inches of free conductor. And he argued about the free conductor. And I'm like, no, it's free conductor entering the box. What you do with it after that, if you want to wrap a screw, that's part of the function of bonding the box. You with me? That type of scenario. So yeah, that's my thought on it. And I did a video on that. I don't know if it's on TikTok. I don't know where the video is. Okay. Then it says, I do that, just make it say 10 inches so you can come out the same length as the other conductors. And that's fine too, if that's what you want to do. Yeah, that's perfectly fine. Yeah, that guy, I actually justified it and substantiated it. So I don't know if he's still on that bandwagon or not, but yeah. 6 inches is what you bring into the box. Okay. All right, folks, let's do some giveaways. That's just kind of my thoughts today on how I worked with my helpers and how I trained them, and I gave them some freedom, right? Some freedom to do some stuff. But I believe that you still have to always be an authority. And so I believe that master electricians and journeymans that are teaching help always have to be an educator to apprentices and helpers, masters to journeymans. And a master needs to always continually want to learn. So at the end of the day, every master and every journeyman have a responsibility to teach this trade to people under them that they supervise. And don't say because nobody taught me that nobody should teach them. If you happen to get in this trade and you didn't get as much help as you got in and you had to learn it on your own, that's okay. Be bigger than that. Now we want to use what you know, what you've learned, and train the next generation, right? But at the end of the day, make sure you're training them right. Please do not pass on false information, misconceptions, things that you believe that you haven't validated, that could, really taint their learning experience. Teach them the right way early on. Okay, that's my biggest takeaway that I can give you when it comes to working with helpers, and then slowly give them the freedom. Like I wouldn't let a helper just totally drill a house, right? I would start out by saying, all right, I'm going to give you this back bedroom, and I want you to drill it all the way to the home run. And I'm not going to tell them the route. I'm going to see what they do because they've watched me do it and they pulled cable behind me. They're going to feel how I do it. And then slowly I let them do it. Now, slowly I've had helpers that have worked up to get their license. And once they get their license, I'm not going to tell them. If I tell them to go upstairs and start working in the back and I'm working downstairs, I'm not going to tell them how to run their holes. They've worked with me enough to know that. And if they ever get their own business and they want to do something their way, they can do it their way. But I reminded people on my job sites, it was my way or the highway, because that keeps uniformity. Okay. I wanted to know that they're doing it the same way I would do it, so I don't have to second guess them, that type of thing. And I also had that honesty policy. If by chance they damaged a cable, then fix it right then. We can use that cable somewhere else, maybe as a loop up to a luminaire, maybe a loop down to a receptacle. We can use it somewhere else. But if you accidentally damage cable, please don't think you're getting me upset. Fix it now. Fix it now. Let's not just try to hide it. I'm not going to tape it, okay? I'm going to fix it now. That was always my mentality, that type of thing. But I was over anal, okay? I made sure before I left that floor that all my home runs were done, and I also make sure there was no deadheads, okay? That everything was looped properly, okay? I would re-go over it. And some people do that as their follow-up check before it's all done. Like when everything's done, you think you got everything you covered. Now, before you turn it over to call for inspection, you do a walk around and you literally follow the lay of the cable to make sure that every outlet box that you see, every lighting outlet, everything has got a cable running to it that's fed. okay? All your home runs are in place. All those type of things are done, okay? It's just part of doing good work, okay? Now, there's so many videos that I see online where the people are recording themselves working at lightning speed. I don't know what this trend is, because people are like, I've watched these videos where the guy's like, he's going so damn fast. Look, I know time is money, but I've already budgeted my time on the project. I do not want my helpers feeling like they have to be a race. They'll get proficient. They'll get better. They'll get smoother. I want neatness. I want professional. I want it to look great. I want them to take the time they feel they need to take to do it right. I never tried to be a speed demon. Never. Okay? I'm just saying. All right, incidentally, my brother loves to solder all of his joints. So when we would go around and make up all the joints, we'd leave all the joints hanging out of the box. And then once all the joints were made up, it kind of sectioned off to where they're going to go in the box, but they leave them out so you can get to the joints. He loved to go around and solder them all, okay? So he would solder all his insulated conductors. But you know what? The equipment grounds, you can't solder. They have to have some type of a mechanism, okay? That's in the code, okay? So even if you pre-twisted them, when it comes to equipment grounds, they can't just be soldered and taped. Whereas insulated conductors and neutral ungrounded conductors, they can be soldered and taped. My brother loved to solder and tape houses, and I did my fair share of them. But the problem was when you get to the equipment ground, then you'd have to use a little greenie, or you'd have to use a regular wire nut anyway, or today a Wago, whatever. You can't solder and leave the equipment grounds because it's in there that you can't do that. But you can still solder for all of your other terminations, provided that you pre-twist. And why are we pre-twisting? Because the solder alone can't be the only mechanism that holds the joint. You have to have some type of mechanical, and that is pre-twisting, and then you solder it, and then you wrap it with tape, okay? He loves to do that, still loves to do that today, except for his equipment grounds. He did a house, and I've been telling him this for years. He did a house, and he soldered the equipment grounds, and the inspector nailed him on it. And he called me, and I told him, I said, yeah, you remember, we can't do the equipment grounds. He said, well, I've been doing it for 20 years. Okay, well, you got caught. I mean, probably not going anywhere, but because it's pre-twisted anyway, the equipment grounds. But the code doesn't allow me to use solder alone on the equipment grounds, but it does allow me to use solder on the other conductors if I want, as long as I pre-twist them, that type of thing. And then wrap it with equivalent insulation, which be electrical tape, 3M, 33, or whatever it is. Okay. Anyway, that's just a little thing. My brother he felt that it broke up the monotony of using wire nuts everywhere. I mean, that was just his thing. He liked to do it. For those that are interested in Trade Hog, again, there's a lot of people that get the subscription. And again, I just wanted to let everybody know that there's pricing changes. It's great to have in your pocket, but you now see we do an annual membership, which is $105, which is cheaper than the $9.95 a month for the light version, which is just great to have in that pinch. Then you got the basic, and then of course you've got basic annual. This $199 is going to be cheaper than the $19.95 a month if you're interested. And then you got the premium, and then you have an annual premium, which is this is what it would be a year, which is cheaper than what this is in a month. That's your choice. But people wanted us to have the annual option, so they didn't have to worry about but one charge, and it's only $105, and it's always in your pocket, that type of thing. So again, just letting people know. And also, with the light, you don't get the office hog, okay? You don't get the office hog portion. You just get the regular, okay? All right, so that type of thing. But for $199 annually, you can get the office hog as well as the regular Trade Hog. That's up to you. We don't care. We don't care either way. You're interested in it. So look at our final tally here. It looks like it's even. Look at that. 6 residential, 6 commercial resi guys, and 3 that doesn't mix. Okay, and some of you might fall anywhere in between there. Also, don't forget to go check out fasttrackstube.com. Check it out. Watch the videos over there if you're a subscriber. If you're not, there's a few free ones over there, but not very many. But go check it out. And if you're a Fast Tracks Enhanced student, you should have access to this. It's a totally different login than what you use on your regular course. So you have to make sure that you go register over here as well. Okay, that type of thing. All right, folks. That's it. Till next time, stay safe. God bless. We'll catch you on Coffee Hour tomorrow. We'll have a totally new topic. And again, you can always send your topic requests to me. And you just do that by going to our website, paulabernathy.com. And there's a form there that you can fill out and put your question. We have a bunch of them that have been sent in. We're trying to sift through them in order to bring them to you. A lot of them we answer by email right away, but some of them will make great shows or great podcasts. So we're kind of going through those, that type of thing. Some of them are way too long. There's no way we could do those for a show because basically you're not asking a question. You're wanting us to be your consultant. It's way too long, that type of thing. I mean, some people, it's like 1,000 words question, that type of thing. So anyway, that's a bit long. Why is my hat crooked? Anyway, all right. Till next time, folks, stay safe. God bless. We'll catch you on the next episode of Coffee Hour. Peace.